Well, hello, everyone, and thank you for joining me. I'm Jill Bloom, group publisher of Walls and Ceilings, and welcome to If Walls Could Talk. It's always great to have with me Trent Cotney, partner with Adams and Reese, my good friend. Trent, thanks for joining me.
Jill, it's great to be here.
Well, Trent, there's never any shortage of legal topics to talk about, and here we go again. So
Yeah.
let's just kick off with what's the update on tariffs and immigration? What you got? I mean, I know your phone's ringing.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it's a moving target, right? I mean, it is. We've already seen that the Trump administration is using tariffs for negotiating purposes. There's a baseline 10% now, and there are certain things like structural steel that are at 25%. You can anticipate further changes, but the bottom line for, you know, whether you're a manufacturer, distributor, contractor, is account for in your contract. Allow for you to pass on that in cost to the customer, and you can do that through price acceleration provisions. We've had to argue force majeure, act of God type stuff, but having that price acceleration provision gives you the opportunity to adjust your contract if you've got any kind of material price increases. So the key is that I don't know what the lay of the land looks like 6 months from now. There could be no tariffs. There could be a lot more tariffs, right? But what you really need to do is protect yourself and have open and honest communications with distribution and manufacturing. Keep your ear to the ground. And, if you're like me, you're listening to the news every day to see what's the latest.
Yeah, I know. I'm sure that'll be, who knows, it could change again in an hour, but hopefully we'll try to, like you said, the best thing is to do is just keep your open conversations going.
Right.
In fact, Trent, speaking of conversations, one thing I really want to make sure we cover, because what we were just talking about before we hit record was about responding to customers that aren't so happy, that are
Yeah.
inundating, certain contractors with just a whole, a series of emails that they aren't sure how to respond to or not responding to. I guess that's the big deal. So can you tell everybody what's happening with this particular situation, or what you're seeing and trending, and what's your recommendation?
Yeah, and this is the case regardless of whether you have a contract with the owner or you are working with a general contractor. You will run into a customer that may inundate you with text messages or emails, and there may be certain accusations or things in there that may be false or may not, color the argument in a certain way. We're all business people, and we always want to lead with customer service, right? We always want to try to keep the customer happy, and that's always the goal. But in the world that we live in, I think it's important to recognize that there are certain customers out there that make it a habit of trying to set you up, right? And it's important. You can lead with civility. You can be, nice and prompt. But I'll give you an example, right? So let's say, if you're on a job site and you're a roofing subcontractor working for a general contractor, and that general contractor says, look, I'm concerned you weren't out on the job today. This is causing delays to what we're doing. It could be as simple as a text message, right? And in reality, it wasn't you that was delaying it. It was one of their other trades. It's important, instead of saying nothing or saying, okay, sorry, we'll do better, to say, look, appreciate your position, but recognize that we're not the cause of this, that it's the HVAC contractor. Right. And I think there's a way where you can still lead with customer service, still lead with civility, but protect your position legally. There are customers out there that do this for a living, that want to set you up. So always be mindful of that. Don't stay silent. Don't, do nothing but try to placate. Make sure that you're supporting your position in writing, because at the end of the day, Jill, that's what a judge, jury, or arbitrator is going to look at.
Yeah. So what happens then if like a few months go by and you're getting all these emails and you don't respond?
Yeah, then you got a one-sided story, right? It's going to be your oral testimony as to what happened versus a paper trail in writing that says something different. So that's why I think it's really important to, a lot of construction disputes, you look at the paper, you look at the documents, you look and see what's going on. I think it's important to put your position forward. Make sure that you're advocating even in change orders or requests for information, that I see a lot of contractors out there, especially on commercial jobs, where they'll submit a change order and all they're doing is pushing paper. Like, here's the cost, here's what we should be entitled to. Set the stage, have a narrative that explains, we were delayed on this project because of X, Y, and Z, or this is extra work because these penetrations weren't identified and, on the plans and specs, and, set the stage so that the layperson that may have to review this change order after the fact can understand why this is extra work, right? And that's the key is you've got to be sort of a closet lawyer as you're writing this stuff because you never know when it's going to become an exhibit.
Yeah, Trent, there's no doubt. I've heard you say ad nauseum so many times, the best paper trail wins. So if you, I guess, like you're saying, if you have a really unhappy customer, don't ignore it.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And look, there are ways to right the ship, right? I mean, you can always, even if it's at the end of a job, you can put your position down in writing and explain what's going on and, talk about it. But don't remain silent, right? Don't remain silent. Make sure that you're putting your best foot forward because, again, you never know. Ideally, everything goes okay and you move on to the next project. But, if you end up, south, you want to make sure that you've got that support if you need it.
Yeah, no, for sure. Great advice. And so the last thing I want to ask you, Trent, is it still seems like there's a lot of activity when it comes to mergers and acquisition. How long do you think that this will continue, and how is it affecting the industry? How is it affecting your clients, your current contractors when they kind of merge into these PE firms? And what are the top couple things that any contractor that's looking to sell needs to look for?
Yeah, so, mergers and acquisitions, whether it be through a consolidation model or private equity or, even succession planning, that kind of stuff. It is still hot, right? It has not died down. I think the players that are in the field now are players that are strong, right? I mean, I think we had an influx of a lot of private equity and other, investment that may not have understood roofing. And what we're seeing now is, that there were great players that came in 23, 24, and now those great players are still here. And, there may be some others that understand what roofing is about. So I think it's important if you're looking to sell your company, you want to do as much due diligence on them as they're doing on you, right? So they will come and they will ask you for everything under the sun, everything from your tax information, your cash flow, all the financials, your contracts, you name it. They will ask for all that. But you want to do the same thing. You want to meet their people. You want to understand where is their money coming from? What is their plan? Have they purchased or bought other construction companies, right? Make sure you understand what your future looks like. Don't just get distracted by a giant pot of money, right? And that's the key because oftentimes, Jill, they will start off and say, hey, here's our letter of intent. We will give you X number of million. Well, as they start going through that process, the goal is to chop that down, right? So by the end of the game, you might be at, 60% of what the original offer was. And you really need to make sure that you're got good advisors, good consultants, good people around you that can help navigate that process because it can be complex and laborious for sure.
So do you mean that like after the sale's been made, like they're retracting dollars, or that's before that happens through the process?
Well, both. I mean, you typically what happens is you'll get a letter of intent, which has sort of the bullet points. Here's what we're going to pay. We want you to stay on for X number of years. We're going to buy your property, and it's just a bullet point type thing, right?
Got it.
But that may be based on certain multiples of EBITDA or other ways to calculate that. But oftentimes what they're doing is they're looking at the financials and they're looking at certain things and they may back out certain stuff and that number may decrease before closing of the transaction. There's a second part of that where usually there's a holdback or an escrow that deals with certain contingencies. So post-closing, you may lose some of that escrow amount based on certain contingencies that are written into the transaction. That's why it's really important, to take the time to understand who is it that you're dealing with, what is the plan, and making sure that you've got really good tax advisors, consultants, professionals, around you to help guide you through that process.
Yeah, for sure. Great advice, Trent, as always.
Mm-hmm.
Well, thank you thank you so much for your time. And if anybody has any questions, Trent, how do they reach you?
Sure. They can email me at trent.cotney@arlaw.com or anywhere on social at Trent Cotney.
Fabulous. Well, as always, we really appreciate your insights. And if anybody has any questions for us, it's roofingcontractor.com or wconline.com. And just follow us on all our social media so you can stay up to date on all the great content we're putting out. But stay safe and healthy, and we can't wait to talk to you soon. Thanks again, Trent.
Thank you.